Good afternoon. Welcome to David Shu's fifth live cast. For our first time viewers, David Shoes is a 501c3 nonprofit organization whose mission is to reduce teen violence through youth empowerment, education, and community engagement. It was born out of the loss of my son, who at the time was killed by another teen. We go to schools and other youth audiences, encouraging our youth to honor their own lives as well as the lives of others. We also give book scholarships to young men for the 4 years that they attend an institution of higher learning. Since the pandemic, to reach out to the community, we began having discussions of topics of importance to the community in the form of live casts. This year, we are honored to have our Vice President, Ms. Harris, uh, as the Vice President of the United States. I think she represents a new, an opens a door for our young women to think of themselves as leaders. We often say to our students, you can be or do whatever you desire to become. But when they don't see people who look like them in their positions, in the positions they desire, it is hard to believe. It's hard to believe. Thank you, Kamala Harris, and I'm quite sure I'm mispronouncing it. Please forgive me. Um, to be a role model for the young of today. Our discussion today is about women in leadership. We want our young women to know they are needed and their voices must be heard. Today, we are presenting to you two women who have taken the charge to have their voices heard to make a difference in their communities. So let's begin. Ladies, when I call on you, please introduce yourself, your city of residence. Please also describe your journey of leadership and anything else you'd like to share with our audience. All right, Miss Reba Watson, would you begin?
Sure. My name is Reba Watson, and I'm a resident of Hillside, New Jersey. I grew up in Irvington, New Jersey. How my leadership journey began, actually, when I was very small, maybe like grade school small, my mom would go to like the PTA meetings and the board meetings. So I was always with her, and I was always inspired to see how my mom, Miss Elaine, and other women of our community then how they would like bond together and make things happen in our community. So that's how my leadership journey actually began. Moving to the present, I'm a mom of three children. I'm very active in my community. And when we talk about leadership to me is it as a woman, we're leaders in every situation we're involved in. So how my journey began, that's how it began when I was a little girl. But how it's going pretty good. I can't complain. Like I've been on the school board, I've done the PTA in my school. Um, I'm the leader of my household, my children. I'm a leader at work. So in different capacities, I wear different hats. But the role as a female leader, an African American female leader, is key to make, how do I want to say, to bridge our community and make our community better. That's what I'm trying to say.
Thank you, Reba. You're 100% right. And I like the fact that you think about the little things that we do and realize the leadership qualities of those little things. You know, sometimes we glaze over those and we don't think of those as a part of being a leader, but they also are. Our next guest, or our next panelist is Miss Yvonne Garrett Patterson. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Elaine, thank you so much for inviting me, and thank you for your leadership and your being such a great role model and a great teacher in our community, in our state, and in our nation. Very, very thankful for the role that you play in serving our community. So thank you. It's an honor to be with you today.
Thank you.
So my journey began with certainly being influenced by the exceptional women that I've had the privilege to be raised by and influenced by. My grandmothers and my grandmothers were both activists in their right. One grandmother was very active in the home and demonstrating the quality of life in the home, dinners cooked at a certain time, meals prepared, serving family to the nth degree. Other grandmother was more active out in the community. She was a community organizer and very active in cultivating the talent, gifts, and abilities within the community. They both were teachers, and so they both had very specific fronts that they excelled in and were just extraordinary in. And I'm thankful for their role models, as well as my mother, who was a teacher in Newark Public Schools, who was a great tennis player. My mother was a tennis champion, amateur tennis champion. I came home one day, and in the den, it was very quiet. The house was quiet. I walked in the den, and Arthur Ashe was sitting on the couch. And so at that point, I knew what type of influence my mother had, that Arthur Ashe would, you know, find it important to be in our home. I also was influenced by Althea Gibson, and had an opportunity to be instructed by her. So I'm very fortunate to have had extraordinary role models, not only with women, but also with men. And I'm very, very thankful. And I have a great deal of responsibility to honor all of their legacies and their contribution and investment. And I take that very seriously. I'm a mother, as well as a grandmother, mother of four, grandmother of seven, a wife, and committed to loving my neighbor and loving our community and helping to build the potential of our community, promoting that potential. I think that's a strategic and very specific need, that we recognize our potential and work to help fulfill it. So,
Wow. You've got a great background. I'm just
yeah,
thinking about
I'm very humbled by it and thankful for sure. Hmm.
right. I was thinking about Arthur Ashe. I read the book years ago, Coffer Boy, and the
Hmm.
guy who he was with a South African who went into tennis as a result of Arthur Ashe,
Hmm.
and he gave us his story. So, wow,
Hmm.
fantastic background, and
Very, very,
thank you.
very thankful. Reba, and
Yeah,
thank you so much for your leadership and your role in community. It's an
yes,
inspiration.
Same
absolutely.
here. Like I'm in awe. Like just listen to
Mm-hmm.
what you said about the potential of our community, and then you had the privilege of meeting Arthur Ashe. How cool is
Mm-hmm.
that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was extraordinary. I
yeah,
mean, even more so now than it was then, especially when you go to the U.S. Open and go into the Arthur Ashe Stadium, and to
yeah.
know that we brush shoulders.
Right.
So he came out of the American Tennis Association, which was the Black Tennis Association
Mhm,
that was formulated out of Virginia, out of North Carolina, and up the Eastern Seaboard. And
mhm.
my mother and my father were a part of that
Uh-huh.
American Tennis Association, because at that time they could not play, in white facilities, and it wasn't interracial. And so
Right.
actually they helped to break the color barrier in tennis, no question, with certainly Arthur and of course Althea Gibson. So,
Right.
but the American
Right.
Tennis Association was such an extraordinary network of not only tennis players but professional African Americans, and it was just an honor to be exposed to that community and wanting to carry the legacy of what that represents. So.
Wow.
Awesome,
Wow.
awesome.
Why do you think it's important for women to be major players in the leadership of our communities? Why do you think it's important for women to be major players?
I'll go.
Mhm.
I think it's important because to make effective change or to make change, period, you have to have a seat at the table, right? So, as women, they stereotype us a lot. What do? We serve the guests, right? we're the servers. But in leadership roles, it's important for us to have a seat at the table. So having that mindset, I feel like women, and I guess if the men are listening, they're gonna say, "Oh," but I feel like we are the backbones of our communities, right? So we know how to make it happen under any circumstance. Think about our parents; they would feed. I mean, I used to look at my parents like, "How can you feed the whole neighborhood?" And all we had was like, I know it's figuratively speaking, like a loaf of bread and two pieces of fish, right? So like that's why I feel like women, it's important that we have a seat at the table and being in leadership roles, because it's cool to serve, it's cool, but the people at the table are the real ones that's making the decisions. And that's why I feel like it's important for women to have the major, to be major players in our communities, in the boardroom, in the situation room, things like that.
Yes, yes. Yvonne?
Well, I think it's certainly, I know it's important that we understand not only to maintain what is needed, the quality of life, but that we also are proactive in addressing the changes and the improvements that we need in community, right? And one of the things that we don't want to do is foster a status quo that no longer works for us. I mean, we want to maintain the traditions and the values that certainly do work, but then there's always a need for improvement and for change. And we need people at the table recognizing that, understanding that, and being willing to bring that. Because we don't want to nurture the status quo when it doesn't fit for us anymore, right? So, we have to be prepared to bring what's new and what's different and what is in the best interest of community currently, right? And we have to guard against being complacent and compliant with the status quo, and believing that that's all there is, or that's all we can afford to do. We can afford to do whatever we believe we can afford to do, right? And I challenge our current leaders now, because our community should be a lot better off than it currently is, economically, socially, educationally, morally. We should be a much stronger community, because we've been in charge for a while in our own communities, and the community certainly should reflect, and the community does reflect whoever is in charge. So we have to be willing to challenge that when it doesn't line up with fulfilling potential and capability.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think I was thinking we talk about being at the table, and that's fantastic. And we said major players, and I'm not lessening the what do you call it, the importance of having African American men or men at the table, but I don't want to lessen our position at that table as well, because we are just as important as any other person around that table. And
Mhm.
sometimes I think if it was women at the table, each one of us look at a position or at a situation based on our background. Maybe, just maybe, because we have been in a male dominated country, in a male dominated society for so long, we think certain things should go certain ways, and because that's the way it's been. I think bringing that female voice, seeing it from the eyes of someone else, could possibly make a great change. Could possibly make great changes, because I don't think that that's happened as much as it should happen. Okay.
That's right. You're
That goes
right.
to what Miss Yvonne just was talking about the complacency, right?
Right.
So we have to get out of that culture and that mindset to say, okay, we made it. No, we can go far. Let's break through those glass ceilings. And that's where we have to understand as women, you know, our worth, our value, and what we can bring to the table. Like you said, we can look at a situation from our perspective. And I think it's important that we communicate that message to all women. Like, don't belittle yourself. Don't say, well, I guess no, you can do this. You are just as valuable or just as important as that your male, not male bashing anyone, but as
Right,
you
right.
know, as the male that you're sitting there, you can make decisions. Like, you know, that's what I'm saying.
You said something that's really, really, really important, and I think that that's one reason why we have this, because I've been in audiences with young ladies who have who are battling with a sense of self worth. And I
Mhm.
think it's extremely important for them, for all of us to look in the mirror and say, I matter.
Mhm.
Not that, I matter, I'm a human being, I have gifts, I have talents, I have abilities that the world needs and needs to be shared by all of us and shared to all of us. And for young people, I think that's extremely important. They have to see how important they are, based on their own capabilities. That hits next to me. It's really important. Oh wow!
Right.
What are some of the
Yeah. Well,
character?
we.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Now, what are some of the characteristics or skills that you have that helps you in your leadership position? What are some of the characteristics that you have that you think that helps see yourself in a leadership position?
Well, there's an ingredient for success, and it takes that ingredient, to accomplish it. Steadfast, patience, endurance, vision, passion, commitment. There's a number of things that factor in to to try to represent success. As all, but the driving factor, I believe, is service. I believe that's the driving factor. Are we still on?
Yes. Can you hear us, Yvonne?
I can hear you.
Yeah.
Hello?
Yes. We're here. We're here. I hear you. You can't hear us?
Yeah, it's breaking up a little bit. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Uh huh.
You can hear me.
Right. Can you hear us?
Yeah, the
Can you
screen is
hear me?
frozen a little bit. Okay. I think the primary driver, is service. Is recognizing a need and doing what you can to meet that need. I mean, you can be terminally greed or not, but service is distinct in and of itself. And I think that, in terms of leadership, we first need to value service and recognizing the needs of others and being willing to, very simply, they talk about critical race theory, and teaching our children about valuing people of color. It just comes down to one simple phrase, which the Bible clearly communicates: love your neighbor as yourself. It's just that simple. And as we take that approach to not see color, but see people for who they are, and be willing to serve the needs of others.
Mhm.
Martin Luther King, I thank God for him. He said it's character. And that is a critical prophetic.
We're going in and out.
Yeah, yeah.
Yvonne, can you hear us? Can you hear us?
I hear. I don't know. I can't. Yeah.
Go ahead, Reba.
Um, you asked like, what are some of characteristics of a leader, right?
Uh huh.
Um, my first characteristic is tenacity, right? So I'm very determined. Like I am determined to succeed as well as reach my hand back to help the next person to succeed. Another characteristic that I believe in is resilience, because I mean, everyone have a story. Everyone is faced with different things. And I always say your situation can help the next person, right? Whether it's good or bad. And then as Miss Yvonne mentioned, service. Service is important. That's why being involved in a community is critical, because if you don't stop to service people first before you service yourself, then what's the point in having community?
I hear you. I honestly and truly hear you.
Or
And the question,
leadership.
Or leaders, right?
right, right,
Right,
right.
right,
Or
I
leaders, right?
right,
Yes.
right, absolutely.
right.
And the question is then, to me, then why are we here? If why are we here? Are we here just for ourselves? And if we're here just for ourselves, there's no such thing as community. We don't need to lead anybody because we're here for us, you know. Uh, and if we live in this community of human beings, then you're 100% right. You're 100% right that we are here to serve. And I think that that's one of the most noble, what do you call it, professions, and I don't care how it looks, there is. And just as you said, Yvonne, that's a basic biblical teaching, one of the David's shoes, to be honest with you, is based on the Bible verse, thou shalt love thy God, um, and thy neighbor as thyself. The God, thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy mind, with all thy soul, and thy neighbor as thyself. Which means that I am supposed to
Mhm.
have so much love for me, and because I have that kind of love for me,
Mhm.
then I'm supposed to have that love for my neighbor. And if I have
Mhm.
that kind of love for my neighbor, then I cannot sit and see my neighbor in need.
Yes,
I've got to do something,
yes,
you
yes,
know?
yes,
And I honestly, that's the basis of it as far as I'm concerned. That's the basis of it all, I think that sometimes situations pushes us into leadership roles because we
Mhm.
cannot, and you talk about complacency, we cannot be complacent about this particular situation. It must be addressed, it
That's
must
right.
be fought for, it must be worked on, something must happen.
Mhm.
And instead of saying who's going to do it, so maybe, just maybe, it should be us. We need to look at
Mhm.
ourselves and say, well, what can I contribute to this
That's
particular
right.
situation or problem? Right. What are the
Mhm.
joys? What do you think is good?
Mhm.
What are the good feeling about being in a leadership position?
To see
um,
things come to fruition, to
Yeah,
see
yeah.
things come to fruition, to see projects fulfilled, to see children on the right course, getting the support that they need, the nurturing they need from a community perspective, certainly our own children, but from a community perspective, assuring that they're in a healthy, safe, productive environment that is going to contribute to their growth and well-being, protecting them. But I get the most joy to see our community safe and see it whole and all of the resources that we need uh, functioning, at full capacity. Um, and that's something to strive for, to continue to help uh, husbands and wives relate to each other responsibly so that their children are in a safe, healthy, productive environment, and then the children getting the support that they need, not only from their home, but from the neighborhood, the schools, doing their job to make sure they have a well-rounded education, and that they deliver on their responsibility in terms of assuring that the children do get a quality education. that is to me, I live for seeing that fulfilled. That brings me a great deal of joy. I can tell you what makes me unhappy when the opposite is
Mhm.
prevailing.
Right.
That drives me to service. When you see the discrepancies and the disparity, it drives me to try to infuse this vision of wholeness, within the home and within community.
Right. 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 Reba?
So, what brings me joy in leadership roles? I look at things from like small achievements as well as large achievements, right? So when we talk about like when you said like seeing kids thrive, seeing our community thrive, those are big joys. But little things make me happy. So let me give you an example. If I do a lot with the youth football and cheer program in our town, right? So when I see like that young lady who wasn't as confident when she first registered, right? She was like, "Oh, I don't know if I could do this. I'm a little bit bigger." And then once we get towards the season, and or in the middle of the season, and she can do that cartwheel, or she's out there confident cheering the team on. Those are the joys I like. Those small achievements, because I feel like those small goals that have been reached brings about the bigger goals, right?
Yes.
So like
Yes.
I'm all about like, and I'm for you, Miss Yvonne. Our kids deserve the best of the best of the best. Our community deserves the best of the best. But the small things, they add up to the big things. And I'll give you another example, right? Like I said, I'm from Irvington, not Short Hills. I'm from Irvington, New Jersey, right? So I take pride in that we went to all the public schools, my siblings and I. I have 2 degrees. I'm very successful. I have an excellent job. I'm just a young lady from Irvington, right? So I look at things like that when people say, "Oh, you did this, you did that." No, no, no. I look at the smaller achievements. That's what bring me joy. And when we talked about servicing people, like when I see that I was able to help someone or lead them or guide them or even just provide, like I said before, reach back and help them step up the stairs with me, and that joy on their face, that's what gives me what's the word I'm looking for? That's what gives me like wholeness and completeness and
Yeah.
fulfillment.
Right. 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 And I think I'm beginning to wonder whether there are little things and big things. Maybe it's all big things, helping that one young person is a big thing, helping that person change and see themselves differently is a big thing. Helping the community see themselves differently is a big thing. So I wonder whether we should be quote evaluating or judging. I think it all is because it all works. It all works for the betterment of all. That young lady that you touched. Who's to say that she will not realized her power, her personal power, and be able to do something totally, impactful for her community. You know, I think that maybe, just maybe, we need to think about what is it that I can do. It doesn't matter how small, how large, if it is grandiose or whatever, but what is it that I can do to move my community, the people I work with, um, the youth, how can I move them one step forward? You know, that might be the big thing.
Right,
Yeah.
Um,
right, right. I
Yes.
like that. That's very true. Like you said, what
Yeah.
can I
I
do?
I, I agree. And Rayba, I thank you for that. Really. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. It's like a delay. It's okay. Go ahead.
Hmm.
Yvonne,
No, I was just saying I appreciate you talking about, being appreciative for the little things, just the moments that reveal, that there's some fulfillment in it, and just rejoicing in those moments. And we do need to stay in the moment, because a lot of times in leadership we're always thinking about this
The
big
next minute.
picture, or how change can come. And so their lives, particularly for women, who are in leadership or pursuing service to community is that balancing, right? Balancing of taking care of self, our relationship with husband, children, home, meals, service, cleaning. I mean, there's definitely a balancing act in addressing, and so finding joy in the journey, right? Um, that's it. That's that in the journey. You know how you set a table, what meals you cook, hugging, kissing along the way, so that there is that balance. And I have to be mindful of that, because there are certain things that drive me, and I have to be careful in terms of how I manage that drive, right? In terms of the things that are going on in community, and then of course the things that are priority for home and family, and it is a balancing act. There's no question. And the other thing that I think is also important, and that is to understand what we're called to do,
Yes.
right? And a lot of times your misery is your ministry. And I'm sure you all have heard that. Um, the thing that pains you or brings you discomfort may be the very thing that you're called to address. I found that in my case. That's how I, talk about getting into a leadership role. You know, just trying to address those issues can catapult you into a leadership position or being perceived as a leader. But a lot of times it's the passion, it's the drive, it's the desire to see something corrected, and the potential of a situation, addressed responsibly.
I think it goes right back to what we said earlier about complacency.
Mm.
Um, as long as we can't be complacent, we can't look at a situation and just accept it as is, knowing that something has to happen, something needs to be done. And I, I, I don't know. I think that it's extremely important for us to realize that that's exactly where the leadership comes in. When we say no more, enough is enough, and it's time. I have to move. Uh, the complacency. Can you hear me?
Mhm.
Okay. We have to. We can't be complacent, and that's what I heard you saying, Yvonne. That you could not be complacent. That you had to get up and you have to move. And I think that that's one of the things that catapults quite a few people into leadership positions. What would you say to people who feel they have nothing to offer and, and sit on the sideline?
I
Say that
would
again, Elaine. I'm sorry.
What would you say to people who feel they have nothing to offer and sit on the sideline?
I would say
Mm.
I look at it like everyone has something they can bring to the table. Everyone. Even in leadership they teach you that sometimes you keep it's this is my words, but you keep your enemies close, right? So like if you have a bunch of apples and one of them is going bad, if you don't address that bad apple, it can potentially make the other apples go bad. So I approach this every situation for those who are feel like they're sidelined and they don't want to participate or they don't have any value. Everyone can bring something of value to the table, and more importantly, those of us that are at the table, we all should take the approach to understand that you learn something new every day. So as a leader, you should look at it like not you're on the sideline, you don't have anything to offer. Everyone has something to offer because that's the only way things work with collective thinking, everyone's perspective, right? That's how I see it.
Good. I think you said something that made me think, and I'm trying to. You said okay. I think it's important for us to make sure that we are seeing. We might be at at around that table. We may be able to see certain things in people who don't see. They don't see things in themselves, and we have to. be the mirror for them and say, yes, you can do this. Or there's something that you can do. I know that there are times when I'm talking to people about, gun violence and talking about, asking them to connect with young people. And I know many of the older people might be afraid to reach out, to our younger people. So the one thing I always tell them, if all you can do is pray, do that. So what my thing is, whatever you can do, just go ahead and if all you can do is smile, you see a kid walking down the street. If that's all you can do that. You know, I think, and unfortunately, because of the society that we live in, because of the negative learnings that many of us have had, many women don't feel they have that anything to give, and it's up to us also to make them help them to recognize that they do have something to give. I tell kids, as long as you have breath in your body, you've got something to give.
Right,
So if you're breathing, you've got something. I don't care what it is, but you've got something, and it's up to you to find out what that thing is in order to give.
right, right. I agree.
Okay.
I agree.
How do you stay on top of current issues that matter to our community? How do you stay on top? How do you stay focused?
You can go, Miss Yvonne. I feel like I'm talking too much.
No, it's okay. Go ahead. It's fine.
Okay. Um, well,
Hmm.
there are various ways I stay. I don't want to call on top of things. I stay abreast of what's going
Yeah.
on. So one, as a mother, and my kids, they're young, not young, but they keep me in tune with the 20-year-olds, right? Because that's how old my children are. But I read, um, and as they say, I'm out in the streets, right? So to know what's going on, you got to be a soldier in that army, right? So you have to be out there. You have to be going to the meetings. You have to know, like you said, who your elected officials are, so you can hold them accountable. You have to be able to say what our children needs when it comes to education, when it comes to resources, right? Because I look at it, I've been blessed to be fortunate and have a great career, right? So I see what these employers are looking for and what, how they're looking at things. So that's how I stay on top. And then I take pride in being raised in Irvington, right? Because it wasn't, and it isn't a short hills, right? So we saw things that other people didn't see. So that made me a whole person. But that's how I stay on top of things, by like reading and being in the street, like literally just being out there in the street.
All right. Yvonne?
Well, I'm a woman of prayer, so I spend time in prayer, and and I try to study to show myself approved. There's always more to learn, certainly about our creation and the God intent. And so I use that as the standard bearer for our society, because it just makes sense. It just resonates with me to love our neighbor as ourselves. That's basic. And so that helps me stay abreast and on top of things because that's a priority item, right? And so biblical principles to me are very important, because it offers me a firm foundation. And I know the difference of standing on that foundation and standing on my own precepts. And there is a difference between the two. I'll take the biblical principles any day. The word says, lean not to your own understanding, but in all thy ways acknowledge him, God, through Christ for me, and he will direct our path. And so that's where I choose to live, because it has bared the greatest fruit and the greatest understanding. So that is the foundation for me staying abreast, because God has given us everything pertaining to life and godliness, and so that's the standard in which I judge everything else, and not just judge, but just try to live according to that standard and share that standard, because I know what it is not to live that standard, and I know the outcomes when you don't make choices that are in line with principles that are foundational in terms of faith. So I'm thankful for that. And then just you know you know you know by what you see, right? And you can see when it's right, and when you can see when it's wrong, and so this is one of my challenges with the current political powers that be. Just because you're a political leader and you're in a position of authority doesn't mean that you're an effective leader.
Mhm.
True.
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
Very
might be
true.
successful politically, right?
Right.
And but that doesn't mean that you're an effective
Leader.
community leader.
Right.
That means that you've been able to navigate the political system to, gain position, but that
Right.
doesn't mean that you're an effective leader. So, so you have to gauge that by what's being produced
Right.
ultimately, right? Or
Absolutely.
what's not being produced. And that's the way I stay abreast. If there's trash in the street, if there's trash in our schools, children aren't being taught properly, they don't have the proper educational services within the community, then that's my benchmark, to determine how we should respond, to
Right.
needs and interests. So,
Right. Right. What advice would you give a senior, uh, a senior a woman who's a young lady who's graduating from high school this year and is thinking about um, aspiring to a leadership position, let's say even in government? What advice would you give?
in terms of government, say that again. I'm sorry, Elaine, I'm not hearing you clearly.
Okay, what advice would you give to a senior, a young lady who's graduating this year, and I'm thinking that that may be aspiring to show her leadership ability or capabilities in government or in the political area. Maybe I'm maybe I'm saying
Well,
it.
I think it's very important for anyone striving for any leadership position that they understand how to follow, first of all, and be under tutelage and under people who have a proven track record of success. Mentoring is extremely important, and aligning yourself. Um, and that's one thing that we have to teach, I believe, young women, particularly in the African American culture, is to value authority, particularly authority in elder women. That's a fundamental, because there are universal principles that govern the welfare of our existence, and being aligned with younger women, being aligned to elder women who are faithful and true. Um, but faithfulness, and committedness to honoring authority is a fundamental principle that I believe, our young women, need to value more. Because a lot of times, and I'll speak for myself, which I've been very repentant of, just that independent, kind of not kind of at times rebellious nature of, like, I can do it all and I don't need anybody and nobody needs to tell me anything because I know how to do this, right? Which is the furthest thing from the truth, right? Um, but to really teach those kinds of um, basic principles that will assure growth and success, right, in an individual. So I would advise any young woman to align herself with a mentor, who has a track record and demonstration of success.
Thank you. I honestly I understand that. I really and truly understand, especially having a mentor. Having someone who have walked the path to be able to come back and share and even walk with a young person. Reba?
Um, what advice I would give a senior? I actually have my youngest is a senior.
Oh, okay.
um,
Mm,
so what we try to tell her first and foremost is to know, like I said earlier, her self worth, right? And knowing your
mhm,
self worth is important. And it goes with what you said, Miss Yvonne,
mhm,
because then knowing you're important, so that means you had to come from someone that was important, our elder women, right? So
mhm,
knowing your,
mhm,
we teach our daughter self worth, respect yourself, right? But if
mhm,
I had to give the advice, I would say learn as much as you can. Learn if that's the road you want to go on, learn what you can. You don't always have to have the answers. You don't know everything for one. And just learn as much as you can. Attach yourself to people who, like Miss Yvonne said, who are successful in that field, especially people that look like you, right? And then also go in with the mindset of every day you can learn something new, whether it's from someone younger than you, but more importantly, someone older than you. That's the advice that we give our daughter.
mhm.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. This has been
Yeah,
a
I
fantastic.
wanted to add.
Go ahead.
May I add to maybe I add to this just a little bit more.
Sure.
One of the things that I think that we need, particularly in the African American, growing leadership within the ranks of African American women. One of the things that was taken out of school was certainly, home economics was important. It was important because there was a camaraderie between women in terms of values and principles in a social context, right? So that built bonding, between African American. I think we need more cohesiveness within the African American women cultural structure. I mean, and I know that it's happening, but in terms of cultivating leadership within that ranks, not just hanging out having fun, that has it has its value as well. But one of the things that I think that the male society benefits from that the women don't get as much of is team development. Team development is such a critical piece in terms of constructing our society in a healthy way, right? There at one point they were, women's groups. Of course, there's still, sororities and different things, but I think we can benefit more to understand not just coming together socially, but understanding our gifts, our talents, and ability, and how to promote that within that social construct, right? So that we're affirming each other to fulfill how to play your position, right? And then how we can play positions together. And so we can learn a lot from team sports, from football, from basketball, and how folks work together to accomplish things. And we need to demonstrate more unity and apply ourselves to principles of unity from a team perspective, I think would help.
Right.
I think that everything you said is, I mean, the both of you, what
Okay.
you said has been very, very, very valuable.
Mhm,
I mean, we are, I mean, coming up to the end, but I know, Yvonne, you
mhm.
have something that's going on this weekend coming up. You want to share?
Yes. Thank you for remembering. Thank you so very much. We've been working very diligently with some really faithful women, African American women specifically, in the South Newark area, South Essex community, which also, uh, Reba, you are a resident of and longstanding resident in the South District of Essex County, and now neighbor in Union. Um, yep. And then Elaine, you're in Newark, right? Or you reside in Newark, right?
I reside right here in Irvington.
Oh, in Irvington. I thought you were in Newark, but we're still neighbors. It's still South
Yeah,
Essex.
yeah,
So I'm putting a
right.
lot of emphasis on South Essex, right? So this weekend, the 19th and 20th of November, we'll have the Newark City of Destiny. It'll take place on the 19th at the Trek Center on 55 Ludlow Street. And then on Saturday, the 20th, is the South Newark Summit. It is a 2-day conference with 3 events. On the 20th as well, we'll have a Youth South Newark Youth Summit at Weequahic Park at 11 to 4. The emphasis on the youth is focusing on personal development and civic responsibility. Those are the core areas, core pillars of our concentration with the youth, giving them tools and keys, to help navigate their social waters, and just helping them to recognize what's needed to develop themselves as well as be more responsible citizens. So that's for the youth. The adults, we will meet at the Trek Center on both Friday and Saturday. The Friday event starting at 8:30, going to 2. The Saturday event going from 10 to 2. We are looking at how we can provide information and resources to continue to reconstitute and undergird Newark in addressing very specific social areas. We'll have conversation and workshops around those social areas, those spheres of influence. And then on Saturday, we'll have a marketplace where we're asking businesses and resources, the hospitals, health, business, finance, community come together, share resources, sharing information to the public to promote rising together for the wholeness of community. That's our focus. And so we start with assembling ourselves and continuing to network within the community and to demonstrate our love and our faithfulness and our support for the quality of life for community. So that is the Newark City of Destiny and the South Newark Summit.
Thank you so
And
very
we
much.
welcome you all to come.
Yeah, I'd like to. I'm going to
It
call
is
you.
on Eventbrite. If you go to Eventbrite and put in South Newark Summit or Newark City of Destiny, you'll be able to go in and register for the event. It is free to the public, and lunch will be served, and it will be a joyous, energetic, informative, engaging initiative. So we look forward to the public coming in and being a part of that.
Okay. Newark, you said Newark. What?
Thank
The
you for
Newark.
allowing me to announce it.
Okay. Newark, but I say that again. What is the title?
Newark City of Destiny,
Okay.
South Newark Summit, 2-day conference, 3 events. So, the city of Newark is a great American city. It was founded 357 years ago. It's older than our nation. All of the boroughs of Essex County once upon a time was all Newark. And we have a responsibility to go back to the wells of what made Newark a great American city, uncover the innovation, the talent, the giftings, the contributions that were made not only for Newark's growth, New Jersey's growth, but our nation's growth. And we need to recapture that heritage, that history, and continue to build on that foundation, even reconstructing so that we're even on a firmer foundation. But it comes down to how we treat each other, right? How we treat our neighbors. That's the fundamental foundation of Newark becoming a great American city. They say wherever the nation is going, Newark will get there first. Well, that's either good or bad. So we want to make sure that we lead and represent and be a role model for the nation by how we demonstrate our care for each other, because that's just fundamental. So
Thank you.
that's what we're focusing on, feeding the hungry, clothing the naked, recovering sight to the blind, set at liberty those that are bound. Basic principles, but showing how we do it in practical terms so that we can demonstrate that we truly care about the welfare of community across the board. So
Thank
those are
you.
the types of issues that will be discussed. The
Okay.
how to.
Right. I think I'm going to try. I'm going to call you to see if there's a way that maybe David Shoes can be a part of this as well. So I'll call you within the next 2 or 3 days. But thank you for it, and I'm
I
glad
can tell you
we
right now, yes, there is a way.
okay.
We'll have a table for you if you'd like to come and share. We would love to have you.
I'm there. I'm there. Okay. Yeah, we will talk. Is there anything else, Raven? Is there something on your
Okay, great.
calendar that you would like to share?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't have anything going on at the moment. Just running
Okay.
around.
Okay.
Yes, you,
Um,
yes,
I
you
just
do
want.
too.
I want to thank you.
Just
Thank
running
the
your
both of you.
household is, I mean, my goodness, family. That's enough.
Right.
Yeah. That's
I
why
want to
when
go
you
ahead.
said earlier before we end, Miss Yvonne, when you talked about balancing, that's a challenge. I thought you was gonna ask us like what our challenges as being a leader, but that's a challenge, right? So like you want to be involved in your community, you want to be involved in your household, you want to be involved at work, and you want to be an effective person. But sometimes you really self care. Sometimes you have to take a step back and say, wait a minute, it's like that's hard for me. That's the challenge of being a leader, like the balancing act. It's really you got to figure out because if you give too much time to one thing, something's going to be neglected, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely, Raven. Thank you so very much. And I think that's something that each of us have to remind ourselves of, that we're all being pulled in very different directions. Um, but we have to say, we have to take care of ourselves. I honestly believe in taking care of yourself because if we don't take care of ourselves, we can't take care of anybody else. So that's the first thing on, take care of yourself. But we have to remember that and because we are so used to giving and giving and giving and giving, um, that sometimes I think we forget. I
Mhm.
honestly and truly believe that we forget. Again, I just want to thank the both of you. I think that we've had a pretty good conversation. I think if those who are listening are hearing us, I'm hoping that you took something from this conversation. And it's my hope and my belief and my prayer that if there's a female out there who's just thinking, who's just on the edge of thinking, continue. And so, where do I fit into this? Where do I need to show my gifts and my abilities? How can I help and serve someone else? Because that's exactly what a leader does. They serve someone else. So, how can I serve? Thank you so, so, so very much. And uh I think our next live cast will be probably in January sometime. I'm asking everybody to look forward to it and we're going to continue this. I think because I think that there are important issues that we need to talk about uh, that is related to our community. So thank you. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you,
Take
Elaine. I think this is a perfect platform for you. And I'm very encouraged by your willingness to do this and see the value of communication. It's so important. We need more avenues, even though we have a ton, there's always room for more, particularly around this conversation and continuing to bolster our community to be the best that it can be.
yes,
So
yes, and that's
thank
the
you, and you
purpose.
can leave that neck. You can send me that necklace, by the way. Dear.
Okay, I promise.
It is nice.
It's stunning,
Thank you. Thank you.
beautiful, great
Okay.
choice.
All
Yeah.
right. You guys, you take care.
All right.
And
Thank you, Miss
again,
Elaine, for having
Thank
me.
you,
oh,
Thank
please,
you.
thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you for saying
thank
yes.
you.
Thank you for
Yeah.
Me as
saying yes.
well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Reba, it's a pleasure to meet you, dear.
Yes, you too. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, ladies. You have
Okay.
a good
Bye
evening.
bye.
Okay. Bye
Bye.
bye.
You too. God bless you.
Yeah.
Thank